Castle Sowerby Church sits in a remote location, right on the edge of the northern fells of the Lake District. It's a long, low, whitewashed building, without a tower, and seems to be perfectly suited for this rugged, windswept landscape. Cumbria has several similar churches, including nearby Uldale just 9 miles away. The church at Castle Sowerby is dedicated to St Kentigern, and this tells us that there has probably been a place of worship here since the late 6th century. St Kentigern, also called St Mungo, was a Scottish missionary of the 6th century. He's depicted here in a stained glass window at nearby Coldbeck Church. Forced to leave Scotland, he travelled to Wales, stopping on the way to preach at many places. It's fairly certain that Castle Sowerby was one of those places. Nothing remains of any early place of worship on this site, except for a well named after the saint. The one at Castle Sowerby is now in a private garden, but there are similar wells at Aspatria and this one at Coldbeck, just a few miles away. The earliest parts of the present building are Norman, dating from the 12th century. These are mainly the north wall of the nave and the south doorway, though this was moved when the aisle was added. There are also traces of a Norman chancel arch, which was removed in the 18th century. This would originally have been a very small building, probably similar in size and design to most of Cumbria's churches that were started at this time. Near to the border with Northumberland can be found a disused church that gives a very good idea of what those early buildings would have looked like. Aside from the addition of later windows, Overdenton Church is little changed from its first appearance. During the 13th century, Castle Sowerby Church was extended to the west and the east, lengthening both the nave and the chancel. On the south side an aisle was added, though this may not have been finished until the early 1300s. Certainly the south porch has been dated to the 14th century. The piscina on the south side of the chancel dates from this period, as do the aumbrys in the wall of the south aisle. It seems that there was a chapel at the east end of the aisle at this time. The holes used for fixing the screens in place can still be seen on the aisle piers. Through most of the second half of the 13th century, this region was under the control of the King of Scotland, coming back under English control in 1294, when war broke out between the two countries. But the question of who held the advowson of the church was still in dispute. Put simply, the advowson is the right to select who will be the next rector of the parish. In 1294, the Bishop of Durham put forward John de Langton, then Chancellor of England, to be rector here, but he was never sworn in. In 1295, Henry de Rye took the post. In 1307, King Edward I gave the advowson of this parish, and many others in the area, to the Priory of St Mary at Carlisle. This was not, as it might first seem, some king hundreds of miles away in London, ruling on matters in a remote part of the land. When he gave this order on the 4th of April, it was just 3 weeks after his arrival in Carlisle, having overwintered in Lanercost, just 13 miles east of the city. He had travelled north to try to defeat Robert the Bruce, but Edward's health was failing, and he died in his camp at Brough by Sands before managing to cross the Solway. A monument now stands on the site where he died. There followed a long period of border raids in both directions, causing enormous amounts of damage. Between 1328 and 1331, more than half the demesne lands of Sowerby were laid waste in these raids, and in 1370 they had still not recovered. By the start of the 15th century, the church had reached its present shape, and it seems little changed for the next few hundred years. In the late 1600s, it's clear the church was falling into disrepair. There are several entries between 1664 and 1678 detailing the state of the church and its contents. In 1703, Bishop Nicholson made his first visit and recorded that the chancel was small and in ill repair. The communion table wants rails, and the parish chest has no lock. He also recorded that the roof of the church was in a poor state. In 1734, the chancel was reported to be not in sufficient repair. In 1737, the windows were recorded as broken, and in 1738, the chancel roof needed repairing. It's likely that the repairs were eventually carried out soon after this. On the wall of the church are the royal arms of George II. These date to 1752 and would probably have been added once the work was completed. The commandment boards, the creed, and the Lord's Prayer are from the same date. This was probably also the point where the chancel arch was removed. All that remains are fragments of the pilaster capitals on the south side. Most of the present windows were added during the 17th and 18th centuries, though many of them sit in the original window openings. Certainly, the openings in the north wall are splayed on the inside, in the Norman style. In the nave, there's a tablet recording the names of the churchwardens responsible for some work that was carried out in 1821. The nave roof was repaired and a ceiling added. The belfry at the west end of the church was repaired or replaced at this time. At the end of the 19th century, more extensive work was carried out. The nave was again re-roofed and the ceiling taken out. At this time, the old seating in the nave was replaced with the layout that we see now. A red sandstone font was given a new stem, fixed at the west end of the nave. On one side of the bowl is some carving, which is believed to be the date 1671, but whether this is the age of the font is by no means certain. In the first half of the 20th century, more changes were made. The most prominent of these was the addition of the current east window in 1927. This shows Christ ascending to heaven at the top, and below are the 11 apostles, with their heads raised, and Mary Magdalene with her head lowered in prayer. A new altar was added, with panels carved by Reverend Palliser, vicar of the church at that time. The old altar became a communion table, and the old seating was removed from the chancel. A new oak dwarf screen was added at the steps between the nave and the chancel. An oak lectern was added, using old panels to form a very simple structure, with brackets at the base of the rear. There are several memorial tablets on the walls of the church, one sitting just above the remains of the chancel arch. These include a memorial to the Reverend Joseph Hudson, aged 92, known as the Pasture Pastor for his work on the Cumberland enclosures. In the treasury of Carlisle Cathedral, there's a silver chalice from the church bearing the date 1734. Finally, in the bellcut at the west end of the church hang two ancient bells. One is dated 1586, and the other is believed to be of a similar age, or perhaps a little older. This second bell bears an inscription to St. Mungo. Both of these bells are old enough to have tolled at the defeat of the Spanish Armada. This ancient church is a gem set in a stunning landscape, but is still an active place of worship to this day. There's now only one service a month, and the attendance has fallen, but hopefully it will survive as a living building for another 900 years.